Would you still buy avocados if you knew the price was paid in human lives? As we head into the 2026 export season, local farmers face a horrific ultimatum: surrender their land to criminal syndicates or face a gruesome execution. We expose the systematic violence hidden behind every legal inspection sticker. But thousands of miles away, in the highlands of western Mexico, that same fruit has rewritten the rules of survival. Here, an avocado is not just food, it is leverage, it is territory. It is a reason men now carry rifles through their own fields. At first glance, Michoacán looks like a place blessed by nature. Endless hills draped in deep green orchards, trees heavy with fruit that has come to be known as green gold. The climate is perfect, the soil generous, the harvest constant. It is the only region on Earth capable of producing avocados year-round at the scale the world demands. And the world demands a lot. Over the past 2 decades, global appetite has surged beyond imagination. What was once a regional crop became an international obsession. Prices climbed, export routes expanded. Farmers who had once struggled with corn and beans found themselves standing on land suddenly worth fortunes. Entire towns transformed. Old homes were replaced with concrete houses. Pickup trucks lined dusty roads. Children who once faced uncertain futures were sent to school. For a brief moment, it felt like prosperity had finally arrived. But prosperity, in places like this, rarely goes unnoticed. The cartels came quietly, not with explosions or headlines, but with conversations. A man would arrive at a farm gate. He wouldn't shout. He wouldn't threaten, at least not at first. He would explain. "There is a fee now," he'd say. "A small contribution. Protection, stability, assurance that your harvest reaches the market safely." At the beginning, it almost sounded reasonable. Pay a little, keep everything running. So farmers paid. But the fees didn't stay small. They grew, structured, calculated. A tax per hectare. A tax per kilo harvested. A tax for transportation, for packaging, for simply existing within a region now under someone else's control. And behind every demand, there was an understanding. If you refused, something would happen. Maybe your orchard would burn in the night. Maybe your trucks would disappear. Maybe someone in your family wouldn't come home. No contracts were signed. No laws were passed. But the system became absolute. Over time, the cartels stopped behaving like outsiders. They didn't just take from the industry, they embedded themselves inside it. They began tracking production cycles, monitoring shipments, deciding who could sell, when, and to whom. Roads became checkpoints. Packing facilities became controlled spaces. Even local officials in some areas bent under pressure or became part of the machinery. It was no longer extortion alone. It was governance. A parallel system of authority built not on legitimacy, but on fear. And then something changed. The farmers began to fight back. It didn't happen all at once. It started with whispers, meetings held behind closed doors, conversations between men who had known each other their entire lives, now bound by a shared realization. If they did nothing, they would lose everything. Their land, their livelihoods, their identity. So they armed themselves. Old hunting rifles were pulled from storage. New weapons were acquired wherever possible. Communities organized patrols. Roads were watched, not by criminals, but by the very people who had once been their victims. These groups called themselves self-defense forces. But in reality, they were farmers, men who had spent their lives tending trees, now learning how to hold a gun with the same hands that once planted seeds. Imagine walking through your orchard at sunrise, not with tools, but with a rifle slung across your chest. Every rustle in the leaves carries weight. Every distant engine sound raises suspicion. This is no longer just farming, it is vigilance. And as the movement grew, something else became clear. They could not win this alone. In one tense moment that would come to define their desperation, groups of farmers left their villages and traveled together to the seat of local power. Dust-covered trucks rolled into government compounds. Men stepped out not as laborers, but as representatives of entire communities. They had come to speak, to demand, to be heard. They gathered before officials in Michoacán, laying out everything: the extortion, the threats, the killings, the fear that had turned their homes into battlegrounds. Voices that had long been silenced now carried a quiet urgency. They weren't asking for favors, they were asking for protection, for the rule of law, for the right to live and work without being hunted on their own land. Petitions were made, meetings held. Appeals pushed beyond local offices, reaching toward the federal government. The message was simple, but heavy with consequence. If the state could not defend them, they would be forced to continue defending themselves, and that path, they knew, would only lead to more violence. For a moment, there was acknowledgement. Security forces were deployed in certain areas. Promises were made, statements issued. The presence of authority returned, at least on the surface. But for many farmers, it wasn't enough. Because enforcement came in waves, not permanence, soldiers could patrol a town for weeks, then disappear, and when they did, the vacuum returned. And the cartels were always waiting. So the rifles stayed, leaning against walls at night, carried through orchards by day, because hope in this place had learned to coexist with caution. Meanwhile, the cartels were evolving. Because while farmers were organizing, resisting, and pleading for protection, the cartels were refining their strategy. If controlling the industry from the outside created resistance, then perhaps the solution was simpler: become part of it. In recent years, evidence has grown that criminal groups are no longer just taxing avocado production. They are entering it directly, acquiring land, establishing their own orchards, running farms that look, on the surface, indistinguishable from any legitimate operation. The same organizations once known solely for narcotics are now agricultural players. They plant trees, they hire workers, they export fruit. And in doing so, they blur the line even further between legal and illegal. Because how do you distinguish an avocado grown on cartel-owned land from one grown by an independent farmer? You can't. They move through the same supply chains, pass through the same inspections, end up in the same supermarkets, clean on the outside, complicated underneath. For the farmers, this shift is deeply unsettling. It's no longer just about paying extortion. Now they are competing against entities that operate with both economic power and the backing of violence. Entities that can undercut prices, control supply, and eliminate competition not just through business tactics, but through force. The playing field isn't uneven, it's entirely tilted. And yet, the world continues to consume. Every year, billions of dollars flow through this industry. Avocados cross borders in refrigerated trucks, are unloaded into distribution centers, and eventually placed under bright grocery store lights. Perfect, unblemished, ready to eat. The journey appears seamless, but hidden within it are layers of negotiation, coercion, and survival. There are farmers who still wake before dawn, walking rows of trees planted by their fathers and grandfathers, knowing that a portion of everything they harvest will never truly be theirs. There are families who live with the constant awareness that success can be dangerous, that a good season might attract attention they cannot afford. There are communities where children grow up seeing rifles as part of daily life, where the line between protector and fighter is no longer clear. And there is a quiet grief that lingers beneath it all. Because land, in places like Michoacán, is more than property. It is memory. It is identity. It is the physical connection between generations. To lose control of that land, to feel it slipping away under pressure, is not just an economic loss. It is something deeper, something harder to name. The psychological toll is immense. Trust erodes. Neighbors become cautious. Conversations are measured. Every decision carries weight. Who to trust, when to speak, how much to risk. Even resistance comes at a cost. Those who join self-defense groups place themselves in constant danger. They become targets. Their families become vulnerable. The act of standing up, of reclaiming autonomy, transforms them into participants in a conflict they never asked for. And yet, many feel they have no choice, because the alternative is quiet submission. And for some, that is a slower kind of loss. Meanwhile, efforts to reform the system struggle against its complexity. Governments attempt to regulate. International organizations push for transparency. Certifications are introduced, promising ethically sourced products. But enforcement is uneven. Corruption seeps into institutions. Oversight is difficult in regions where fear dictates behavior. And the economic incentives remain powerful. As long as avocados generate immense profit, there will be those willing to control that flow by any means necessary. This is the paradox at the heart of it all. An industry that has lifted communities out of poverty while simultaneously exposing them to new forms of exploitation. A product celebrated for its health benefits, tied to systems that erode the well-being of those who produce it. A global success story with a hidden cost. And then there is the question that lingers, uncomfortable but unavoidable. What role does the consumer play? When you stand in a store, choosing between fruits that look identical, you are participating in a system far larger than that moment. A system that connects your decision to distant hillsides, to farmers navigating impossible choices, to networks that operate in the spaces where regulation falters. It is not a simple equation. There is no easy answer. Boycotting the product doesn't necessarily solve the problem. It can harm the very farmers who depend on it. Ignoring it allows the system to continue unchecked. So the tension remains unresolved. The future of the avocado industry sits at a crossroads. There is potential for reform, for stronger governance, for fairer systems, for a model that truly benefits those who cultivate the land. But there is also the risk that the current trajectory continues, that criminal influence becomes further normalized, further embedded, until it is no longer seen as an anomaly, but as part of the structure itself. For the farmers walking their orchards with rifles slung over their shoulders, the future is not an abstract concept, it is immediate. It is whether their children will inherit land or conflict, whether the trees they plant today will be symbols of growth or reminders of a battle fought in silence. And as the sun sets over the hills of Michoacán, casting long shadows between rows of avocado trees, the reality becomes clear. This is no longer just agriculture. It is a struggle for control, for dignity, for the right to exist without fear on land that has belonged to families for generations. And somewhere, far away, another avocado is sliced open, perfect, untouched, carrying with it a story most will never see. A story of men who became soldiers to protect their farms, of cartels that became farmers to expand their power, of pleas made to governments that could not always answer, of a fruit that, in feeding the world, has quietly reshaped the lives of those who grow it. And the next time you hold one in your hand, you may not taste the difference, but the story will still be there. Please subscribe to this channel as we exposed more stories on cartels.